Hello, everyone, and welcome. We were just listening to a beautiful song by one of our talented alum, Rena Branson. That song was actually commissioned by one of our partner organizations, Dayenu, to create more Jewish music that's environmental music. So I'm really proud that we get to open with that song. I'm so glad you're here today. My name is Sheryl Cook, and I'm proud to be CEO of Avodah. So today you're going to be introduced to a handful of our Avodah Corps members who are serving in our 2021-2022 cohort and doing critical justice and anti-poverty work across the country. This work is always important, and this has been even truer in this pandemic. So those who might be new to Avodah, our work is about developing lifelong social justice leaders whose work is informed by Jewish values and who inspire the Jewish community to work toward a more just and equitable world. The Jewish Service Corps is our signature program. It's similar in many ways to AmeriCorps or to the Peace Corps, but with a Jewish frame and with some added support and benefits. In the Jewish Service Corps, participants spend a year working at an anti-poverty not-for-profit, living communally in the Avodah Bayit, or house, and participating in an intensive leadership development program, exploring justice issues through a lens of Jewish values. The Avodah Service Corps year is just the beginning for our Corps members. We know from 23 years of data that this is a lifetime commitment, and we're proud that the majority of our Corps members, over 80%, continue working in social justice and anti-poverty work long after they move out of the Bayit. And most of the other 20% are involved as well on boards, as philanthropists, and more. I'm so proud to note that we still count so many of our alumni among our supporters. I know that there's many alum faces in this virtual room today. I want to acknowledge the extraordinary community of stakeholders on this call. We have board members, advisory council members on the ground in our local sites, alumni of our programs, longtime and new supporters of our programs, and many parents and grandparents of our current Corps members here. So glad you're here, as well as family members of our alumni. We have some of the incredible Avodah staff who I'm so privileged to work with every day. And we even have some applicants and recently matched Corps members for next year's Service Corps. Thank you all for being here and supporting the crucial work that Avodah does to invest in and nurture Jewish justice leadership for our community and our country. So right now, you're going to hear from Corps members across our cities to give you just a taste of our work. Please keep yourself muted during the presentation, but if you have specific questions about the work being done, you can ask in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. So now, I love it, the magic of Zoom. I am grateful to be joined by two of our amazing Service Corps members this year. We have James Berry in New Orleans and Rafi Gendler in Washington, D.C., who will be sharing about the work they're doing through Avodah this year. So great, James, I'm going to start with you. You're serving at the First 72 in New Orleans, First 72 Plus, excuse me, in New Orleans. Can you tell me a little bit about what First 72 Plus does and what your role is there?
Absolutely. So I'm actually still wearing my work shirt here, but the First 72 Plus, we are a reentry services nonprofit based in New Orleans, Louisiana. And what that means is that we try and provide formerly incarcerated people with all these services that they need coming out of incarceration. So that could look like anything from helping them apply to public benefits, to providing transitional housing, to providing them with a coach through our peer mentorship program, or even just letting them access our food pantry or clothes closet and, if they're in need. And part of what makes our model so interesting is that we are an organization founded by and for formerly incarcerated folks. Most of our staff is formerly incarcerated themselves, so they know what it's like to go through the entry process and what struggles come up. And we're just dedicated to giving back to the community and making sure everyone has a chance to re-enter society. My official title there is office manager, so I am kind of doing secretarial work and making sure all the staff have what they need to do this important mission.
Great, that's helpful. I was going to ask, but maybe you can say a little bit more about what your day-to-day looks like. What kind of work are you doing? What's that look like?
Yeah, so as I said, it's mostly secretarial work, so some things stay the same. I'm always the one manning the office phone. If you ever call our office number, that's me who's going to be picking up. I also sort client mail. I make sure that we have all the office supplies everyone needs. But as some folks like to say around the office, I also have my hand in everyone's pie. If someone needs help with something, I'm there to assist. And that looks radically different from month to month. 3 months ago, that was me helping out with fundraising efforts for Give NOLA Day, which is our major fundraising effort for nonprofits throughout the community. Now it's looking a lot like doing pre-release work for folks that are going to be coming out of incarceration, so making sure we're in contact with potential clients. And so it differs from day to day, which means it's always an adventure.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. I know it's an organization that we've had a long partnership with. I'd love to hear more about some of the challenging parts of doing this kind of work.
Absolutely. I think one of the most challenging parts for me is having to say no to folks. New Orleans is a city with a lot of need, and formerly incarcerated people are one of our most vulnerable populations. And to give a specific example, housing is very scarce in New Orleans. There's a huge housing crisis where there's a large population of people who lack of access to affordable, clean housing that is disaster proof as well. So we have a lot of folks on the streets, and especially formerly incarcerated folks that have no place to come back to once they are released. And so we have to say no to a lot of people for housing just because we have such limited bed space. And that is a very difficult thing to refuse service to someone for something that they really need.
Thank you. That sounds really hard, and I really appreciate that for 72 Plus is really doing what you do. What has been rewarding about your work?
Yeah. When you have to say no to a lot of people, the thing is that it makes the wins feel so much bigger. So when you are able to provide someone with that thing that they needed, if you are able to say, yes, we can help you, come on in, our doors are open, or if you're able to say, we submitted your pre-release plan or your letter of support, and we were there for you at the parole hearing, and you are coming home, that feels really amazing.
Great, thank you. Rafi, let me turn to you for a minute. You're serving at SEDC DC. I'd love to hear about the organization and your role there.
Sure, and thanks for having me. At SEDC DC, which is a nonprofit legal aid organization focused on debt and consumer-related issues, I like to say I do a little bit of everything in support of the organization's three main practice areas, which are direct legal representation for DC residents with low incomes, policy reform and systematic reform efforts, mostly on the local level at the DC Council, which functions sort of like a state legislature, and then occasionally, sort of signing on to national projects. And third is community outreach and partnerships. So getting the word out about our organization and working with other organizations in the area. My job title is staff member and intake specialist. So what staff member I think means is I do a little bit of everything, combination of support work and more in-depth long-term projects. And the intake part of my role involves hearing from clients or potential clients who reach out to SEDC DC with a legal issue, and occasionally conducting intake with them, and more often working with my colleagues to figure out how to best address a legal issue somebody's having.
Thanks. So I heard you talk about policy reform efforts that you've worked on this year. Will you share a little bit more about what that's looked like? What have you worked on?
Yes. Yeah, I've gotten to be involved in some research and writing related projects, which have been really interesting for me. Specifically, have gotten to partner with other folks on writing testimony for hearings, for legislative hearings. The two most interesting things I've worked on are a effort which recently saw a law pass, which was exciting, to reform and modernize DC's consumer protections as they relate to debt collection. So for example, limiting the number of times somebody can call somebody who they say owes them money, making sure that they've proven that they've notified the correct person, that sort of thing. So that was in the fall, something I was spending a lot of time working on, and then more recently and ongoing, and changing every day. But we are hopeful that we're in the coming days headed toward a positive solution. Is working with a coalition of partners working on seeking a reform to what's called the Clean Hands Law, which in DC prevents anybody who owes more than $100 in fees to the district from getting or renewing a driver's license. And our argument is a complicated one, but a huge part of it is the racial and economic justice implications of that. If somebody gets one parking ticket and isn't able to pay it, it makes it extremely challenging for folks to access childcare or employment or doctor's appointments, these sorts of things. So approaching that from a consumer related lens has been interesting for me over the last several weeks.
I love how both of you talked about how your hands are really in everything. I could hear it from the description each of you gave about your organization. James, let me come back to you for a second. I know that one of the key pieces of the Avodah experience is that you're living in a house with a cohort of other core members who are also working on justice issues in New Orleans for you. Can you share about the ways your work at the First 72 Plus has intersected with the work of your housemates?
Absolutely. And I want to kind of frame that with the idea that folks coming home from incarceration have a lot of needs and have a lot of services that they require. They may not be coming back to housing, as I said, depending on how long they've been incarcerated, they may not be coming back to any family at all. They may still require getting a GED or renewing a driver's license or continuing with legal help or just obtaining basic services. And so that's why it's so helpful to live in a house of people where I can ask and say, hey, what's your intake process like? How do I refer someone over to you? So if someone needs help with their child support or just has a quick legal question, I can ask my housemates who work at Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, which line I should tell the client to call. Or if they need housing support, we can call Unity of Greater New Orleans for their resources. I want to highlight actually one of our partnerships that comes in at a different level, our partnership with Promise of Justice Initiative, where my housemate Mia works. They provide legal support and support across the board for folks on death row and with capital cases at Louisiana State Penitentiary, also known as Angola. And when they are working on getting a client home, they'll turn to us because they know that we have good reentry support. They'll say, can you help us write a reentry plan and make sure that this person has everything they need when they do come home? So we've had a few clients come through them, and we love being able to support in different ways and make sure that someone coming home has everything that they need.
Thanks for sharing that and really bringing it to life. Rafi, I really have the same question for you. How have you leveraged your Avodah housemates experience to impact your own work?
Mm-hmm. Similar to James, I have a handful of housemates who also work in the legal services field locally in DC, and I think something that's really frustrating, as people who work in the landscape, and especially for people with low incomes or who otherwise need to access these services, is that there are so many providers doing sort of slightly different things. So while it's challenging to sometimes feel like we're giving people the runaround, it's been really beneficial to have people, a few rooms over from me, who can ask me a quick question like, "Hey, would Tzedek DC be the right place to refer somebody for this type of issue?" It allows us to collaborate and understand the landscape a little better, and then hearing from my housemates about the different areas of political advocacy and reform efforts they're involved in has been pretty interesting, and allowed me to develop a bit more of an understanding of the local politics, which I find really exciting.
Thanks for sharing that. You both shared about the work experience that you're having and how you actually share some of that with your housemates. Besides work, there's two other pillars of Avodah, of our service corps that we talk about, right? We have our Jewish communal living, our intentional living, and learning. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about how your experience has been so far with both of those. James, do you want to start again? I keep handing it off to you first. Rafi, I promise
Yeah,
I'll
I got
switch.
it. I can go for it. Yeah. So part of what made this year so exciting for me jumping into it was the idea of finally getting to live with other Jews. I didn't come from a Jewish household. I had never gotten to live with other Jews before. And I was really excited to be able to live with a group of people that had a kind of a shared language when it came to culture and religion. And I was this year hasn't disappointed. And one of my favorite things is just getting to hear everyone's different backgrounds, because we're all Jewish, but we all came from different places and it all means something different to us. So, whether they grew up, in the Northeast and they went to a Reform congregation, or they grew up in the South and went to a conservative congregation, or, anything in between, or they've had experiences with Chabad or Renewal Judaism. There's just so much to learn just by talking with other people in the house. That this year has been just amazing to experience.
Thanks. Rafi, same question.
Sure. I came to the year, excited about the Jewish community aspects, but also wanting to sort of knowing what I like and wanting to do my own thing. So felt really grateful to develop a relationship with Rabbi Miriam Liebman, who's in DC and partners with Avodah on learning events and Jewish holiday learning, that sort of thing. So to be able to have that resource has been really valuable, and I've she connected me, or she helped connect me with a congregation in DC that I've gone to several times and really enjoy, and fits a lot of what I'm looking for religiously.
Thanks. I love the shout out to Miriam, who is an Avodah alum herself. Okay, so we're still recruiting. We have a few spots left, particularly, New Orleans, DC. So Rafi, I'm going to start with you this time. What's special about serving in DC? Why should someone come to DC? What's special about that?
When we hear DC, we think of the monuments and the White House and Congress, and all those things are exciting and right in our backyard. So there's a lot going on. It's an exciting place to be a young person, and living here and getting to know the city a little bit. It's exciting to really get to understand it as a place with real people, with the same challenges and exciting opportunities that exist elsewhere. There's no place quite like DC, in that it's it looks like a state and acts like a state and isn't a state, and to live in the nation's capital is very exciting, I think, for a young person soon out of college.
Thanks. I appreciate that. All right, James, tell me about New Orleans. Why New Orleans?
Well, why not New Orleans? I mean, there's just so much to love about this city. And I just think that by coming here, you're going to have a lot to learn. And I like to think of it on the spectrum of poverty to wealth. I mean, it's a very poor city in a lot of ways. It's majority Black. It's been passed over for investment time and time again throughout history. With the climate crisis, it's only making folks, in a lot more danger of losing housing and losing access to wealth. But it's so rich in culture. It's rich in food. It's, rich in history. And even the most bah humbug person gets foot tapping when it comes time for Mardi Gras. There's just so much to experience, and it makes you feel cool to live here.
Thanks. I do have to say, I love visiting both cities. I don't live in either, but I'm a big fan. And every time I visit, I'm like, I could live there. So I think you've given us a little bit of a taste of what it's like. Before I end, I'd love to ask you one last question, which is, how has this experience impacted your future plans? And if you have future plans, would love to hear what you're thinking. Thanks. Let's start with you, James.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure yet what I'm going to do once the year is up. I keep telling myself I've got about a month and a half left to make that decision. But I will say Avodah has really affected my future plans because I know now that I do want to work in a Jewish space, really in a Jewish organization, where I can still have that shared language of Jewishness and Jewish values. And I'm always going to probably be involved in social justice in some way. I can't imagine not doing that after my year. It's reaffirmed a lot of what I knew, and also given me new pathways to explore. So those both things are going to be really important to me moving on.
Great. Well, you have a great audience here. So, if anyone, I don't know if you're planning on staying in New Orleans or you're open, but, reach out. We can hook you up, James. All right, Rafi.
I think being part of the Avodah community and having access to this really diverse and exciting alumni network is something that I am really looking forward to. So those connections, and then also the professional connections I've built at Tzedek DC, which I think is a really interesting organization doing important work. So I'm really excited professionally to have these relationships as I move forward in my career. In terms of next steps, still figuring it out and not quite sure what I want to be when I grow up, but planning, haven't signed the piece of paper yet. So maybe 90% staying on at Tzedek DC for a 6 to 12 month period after the Avodah term ends. Doing a similar but new role, and hopefully working on some of the policy projects.
Beautiful.
And playing it by ear from there.
That's perfect. You should figure it out. I wish you both great, and you're still in Avodah. You're still part of the service corps, so relish this time. And I look forward to hearing where you both land. And I'll just name, Rafi, that every year between a third and a quarter of our corps members get job offers from their placements and end up staying. So that is not something that's built in, but it's always really lovely to see. So whatever.
That's too bad. I thought I was really special.
You are really special, and it's true. We can hold both in Avodah.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So thank you both. I really just want to say thank you. I really appreciate your sharing. Thank you for being here and for spending your evening with us. So I'm going to move on. And I am grateful now to be joined by Jessica Schaefer, Executive Director of Highest Immigration and Citizenship, which is part of JCFS, Chicago's Family of Services, long name, and who also happens to be an alum of Avodah programs, who is here with one of our Chicago corps members, Emily Knopp. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. If not, you're going to tell me, please. Who's serving at Highest this year. So Emily, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and what brought you to Avodah.
Sure. So I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey, and I came to Chicago for college. I studied at the University of Chicago, and all throughout growing up and through college, I did Jewish social justice type things. Anytime I saw something with the words Jewish and or social justice in it, I just kind of ran for it. And it just kind of led me to this path of Avodah, because many of the people that I naturally was meeting in my life and that I admired a lot were doing Avodah, and it just seemed like a wonderful natural step.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to come right back to you. But first, Jessica, hello. Nice to see you. I'd love to hear a little bit about the mission and work of Highest in Chicago.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be with you all this evening. So Highest Immigration and Citizenship is the program within JCFS Chicago that serves diverse refugee and immigrant participants. So we work with folks from all over the world, regardless of faith, regardless of background. And we really help folks as they transition from being brand new in Chicago and in the United States as they transition on their path to citizenship. So we have a refugee resettlement program that Emily is most intimately involved in, that supports folks as they are arriving here from overseas, refugees from all over the world. We have an immigration legal services program. So we're providing legal services, helping folks become permanent residents and citizens and bring family over from overseas. And then we've got a host of other programs and services for our diverse immigrant community here in Chicago as well.
I think my internet is a little bit unstable. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Always fun when we're on Zoom. This is the fun of Zoom. All right. So I know you said a little bit about this, Jessica. So Emily, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about what you do at Highest and what your day-to-day looks like.
Yes, so as Jessica mentioned, I work on the refugee resettlement team. So I'm the refugee resettlement Avodah fellow. And my day-to-day looks a little different every day, depending on if we have families that are arriving or have just arrived. If someone needs help with a particular task, but a lot of the things that I do revolve connecting families to get public benefits like SNAP, Medicaid, sending in health referrals so they can have their initial health screening, and registering children for school and advocating for school related things. And kind of what's been really amazing about being a part of this team is that because our program just reopened this year, it's been really awesome to be a part of creating that a little bit. And that's also meant that we're learning a lot. So I feel like my job and the things that I've been involved in has shifted, and I've been able to learn so many more skills that I probably would have guessed that I'd be able to learn, and being able to learn about all these different systems that our families are having to navigate that are extremely challenging, if you did grow up in America and are a native English speaker, and even more convoluted if you don't speak English and you're not from this country, and there are kind of cultural differences. So day to day can go from applying to benefits to accompanying families to an elementary school or high school to get them registered for classes.
Thanks. And Jessica, I don't know if I missed this when my internet went out for a second, but I'm curious, Emily, you just talked about how the program, was restarted. Is that due to policy, federal policy, and some of the changes that have happened? Do you want to say one sentence, either of you, about that?
Indeed, yes. So refugee resettlement has been part of the history of our Highest program and of JCFS in Chicago for decades. And under the previous administration, that part of our program, refugee resettlement specifically, was paused because the previous administration was I was going to say unfriendly. I think that's not exactly the right word. I think that they closed the door on refugees. And so what that meant for programs across the country was that many had to close or consolidate, or we now say be put on pause because the number of refugees that were being admitted to the country under the previous administration, that number was so low. And so as the Biden administration sort of reaffirmed support for refugees, that gave us an opportunity to reapply and to reopen that part of our program.
Great, thank you for explaining all of that. I had a feeling. Okay, so Emily, you talked a little bit about your job, but I'm going to just ask you, what's been most rewarding and what's been most challenging for you?
I would say the most rewarding times are the times when we're able to help a family experience something for the first time. So my favorite example was we have some families whose children have had limited or no access to education because of either where they lived or the fact that they've had to evacuate, and they've kind of had lack of continuity in their education. And recently I got the opportunity to help register a 16-year-old girl for school for the first time. And it was a very, it was when I heard I'd be registering people for school, I thought okay, we go and we fill out some forms and then we leave. But I think being able to be part of this highly emotional and sometimes really like, scary process for families and being able to be with them and like making sure that, you know, we bring them to school, like the whole, like, you know, multiple family members are there. We have, you know, an interpreter. We're introducing them to students to make sure that when they get there, like they know that there's somebody who speaks their language, and just kind of like seeing how that transforms their experience. So, you know, I think, Jessica, I think we just got an email that this particular participant was reading the signs on the road and has been like really enjoying school. And it's just like those kinds of moments when like you get to be a part of somebody, you know, acclimating to a new country when it's like so overwhelming, it's so hard, and you get to be a part of it. Those are like the most like emotional and beautiful. And I really like those kinds of things. And then I would say the challenging parts are that, you know, the systems are confusing and sometimes don't make that much sense. And our families are frustrated and we're frustrated about the systems. And so I feel like it can be challenging, sitting with a family and like having to tell them like, I so wish I could change the system for you. Like, you have no idea how much I wish that I could make all of this easier, that I can make it so that there are fewer forms and there are fewer requirements, and you could just kind of, slide right into life here. But unfortunately, it's not made easy. And all we can do is kind of support them and give them choices and be transparent and be highly communicative. And like, that's kind of all we can do. But it's really hard to deliver the news of, yeah, I don't know if like we're gonna be able to provide this thing that you're looking for. And that's really sad.
Thanks for sharing. Jessica, I know this is the first year that HIAS is partnering with Avodah, which is great. So tell me about what this partnership has meant to you and HIAS.
It has been invaluable, and I experienced this partnership through two lenses, right? Through the personal, which is I am an Avodah alum. The program shifted my trajectory and impacted my life in tremendous ways. And so it is personally exciting for me to have a core member on our team now, because I know the impact of the year in Avodah. And professionally, especially at this particular moment in our program, Emily came on board and we actually didn't know yet if we were going to be approved to reopen our refugee resettlement program, but we were hopeful. And we knew that if that was going to be the case for us, we were going to need additional capacity to rebuild our program infrastructure. And so it happened to be, Emily took a risk with us. We were obviously prepared with other job responsibilities should the resettlement program not have reopened. But when we got word that it did, Emily and I were the only two people on board at that time. And so we hit the ground running together as we build up the infrastructure of our team. And we've since hired, I think, 4 or 5 new people to join us. But the capacity that we were able to add because of Emily and because we had an Avodah Corps member was tremendous.
Thanks. It's so nice to hear. And I'd love to hear a little bit. You talked about how Avodah has had an impact on you. So do you want to share a little bit about what that's looked like? You were in the program, I know, a long time ago. So will you, quickly, but tell a little bit of that story?
Sure. It's been a few years now. We won't say how many, but my placement was at a refugee resettlement agency. And I knew nothing about refugee resettlement. In fact, I knew nothing about Chicago. I think there was one spot left in the program, and I said, sure, I'll take it. And it happened to be at a refugee resettlement program, and that sort of put me on my path in this line of work. I've been sort of consistently working in that space since that time. I'm really sorry, Rafi. I was also hired by my Avodah placement after my core member year, but we are special. And so it really just put me on this trajectory to work in this field. It also really shifted my sort of expression and understanding of Judaism. I was raised in quite an insular Jewish community. And so Avodah helped to expose me to other ways of experiencing living Judaism. And so I feel now like I really live my Judaism through this work and through social justice and through engaging with the Jewish community to welcome newcomers. And so I don't think that I would have landed here had it not been for that Avodah experience.
And Emily, I just have a question for you. What's it like to be supervised by an Avodah alum?
It's awesome, I have to say. Well, Jessica is just very impressive and an inspiration to me in many ways. But I think it's really wonderful to share that bond. Like, I think like a lot of times when I like describe what I do, like, when we have like someone at a meeting who like wants to know what we all do, and I say, oh, I'm an Avodah, trying to like explain it to like our other coworkers, like, oh, I am in this fellowship with all these people. We all like, work in places in the city. It's just nice to have someone who gets it. And I like so appreciated that Jessica, has like really, supported me in being able to like participate in like all the aspects of Avodah, and like has always like been there, like if I needed to talk something like through about like programming, and like as like I think like a big part of what Avodah meant to me in terms of like being able to think more deeply about my work is being able to ask bigger questions. So instead of just like, oh, how do we handle this specific situation? I feel like I've really benefited from the fact that like Jessica has this like background, the same background as me in this Avodah space of being able to talk about these like bigger systematic abstract issues and being able to like dive into that together. And like and so that we're not just, in the everyday, we're also thinking about like, how do the things that we do every day relate to these like larger questions of justice and injustice? And I think that I don't know that I would have been able to have that with a non-Avodah supervisor. So Jessica's amazing, I would have been amazing without Avodah, but I have to say that I think being able to share that bond and being able to talk about Judaism, justice, and how they're intertwined within our work that can, have a lot of complexity and can also be like really in the day-to-day. It's really nice to be able to have this like broader frame of reference. And I've been really grateful for it.
And will you share a little bit about Chicago? You said you're from New Jersey. You ended up in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Jessica, you're from, I think you're Canadian, correct? Got it. Right, so you're both have moved to Chicago through Avodah right now, or through your school and then Avodah. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about shout out to Chicago, as I did for the other cities. What's special about Chicago?
I can start. Well, I feel like I love the way that Judaism and justice come hand in hand here. I don't think that that's true everywhere. I feel like the fact that a lot of our work is supported by volunteers who are from synagogues, who are taking of their time and are like, working with us through their religious communities, speaks to the fact that Judaism and justice in Chicago, it's the same thing essentially. It feels like they are so intertwined. That feels really wonderful. And that, starts at the synagogues and the Moshe houses and the bases and the Jewish communal homes of all different types. And I think that's like something that's really stood out to me about the community. And just that, I don't know, there's a lot of multicultural life all around us, like a lot of our families live in Rogers Park, and then Jessica and a bunch of my coworkers live in Rogers Park, and it's like been like a wonderful community that I've gotten to know so much through this. So I have to say, like, Rogers Park is another thing I now love about Chicago, like this idea of like having this rich history of immigrants and refugees, people from all over coming to the city and finding, like their path and figuring out who they are, and having these just like communities that are so infused with culture and like enable people who come from all over the world to find home. And I think that that's like something I'm sure every city could say the same things, but I feel it very strongly about Chicago. And I do think that because of the really extreme weather, it maybe fosters a different kind of connection. I don't know. Maybe like in the summer, we spend more time outside because we enjoy it more and we have more summer events. And that leads to more community building. So I'll say that, but it's a really special place. And it's meant a lot to do Avodah in this context, in a community that I, have loved and will continue to love.
Jessica, I'm just giving you a second if you want to share anything.
I'm not sure I can top that. I was going to say, I think the neighborhoods and the diversity and being able to eat through all of the neighborhoods is my favorite pastime, but and certainly the lake and the architecture are, I think that things that Chicagoans feel very proud of, but it feels like a really warm, diverse, welcoming city. And I was not expecting to be here for as long as I have been. I thought I would be here for my one Avodah year and then I would transition, but it sort of hooked me, and here we are many years later. So I think it's a wonderful place to live.
And Emily, I asked James and Rafi this, and I just want to ask you too. You're obviously doing this work, and you're living in a community of people doing different kinds of work all around you in the Avodah Bayit or house. And I'm just curious about whether there's been any overlap or referrals or anything that's sort of connected across the board with what you're doing and with what other people are doing. And if you have any examples, just share them.
Yeah, definitely. I think like one of the key ways that was illustrated was through something that we have called the Issue Salon, which is when we partner with another person or a couple of other people whose work is like thematically linked to ours. And I think it was interesting when I realized that there were so many people that I could have been thematically linked with, that there were so many people, there were the Jewish organizations, there were people who were working with refugees, there were people who were working in legal services, and realizing that, oh, wow, there's a lot in common here. And I think that something that's been amazing is getting to learn about the legal processes that our clients go through that I'm not always a part of. So let's say there are some people in my house who specifically focus on like asylum kind of processes. And they're the ones who like fight for asylum, get asylum for their clients. And that's something that some of our clients will be experiencing, but is not something that is as much a part of my work. So getting to kind of have this sense of like, what documents are part of that? What parts of like, how do you deal with the fact that retelling stories can be traumatic? Like, is there anything that, can be done earlier on in the process that like, what kinds of changes should be happening earlier on in the process to like be more supportive to families before they have to endure kind of the legal parts of these? Like what kinds of, like, when we're picking through all their documents that they've brought, like which are the ones that are like going to be that we have to put in like a special folder of use this for the asylum case, and which ones, are less important. So kind of getting just that like practical idea of like, we're working with our clients for like a specific period of time, and I'm only here for, for this year. And so the idea of thinking about, well, where will they go next? And what will they have to like endure after we leave feels like it just kind of gives me a better understanding of the systems, the things that are good and the things that are broken. And I feel like it just gives me like a more like holistic view of the like experiences of refugees in the US, just from from the other core members' expertise.
Thank you. Thank you. I love hearing that. I think I got to visit one of your issue salons, perhaps, or not yours, but someone in your cohort. Okay, Emily, why don't you share what this work has meant to you and your possible future plans after Avodah?
Yeah, I will say, just like everybody else, I'm still figuring it out. I don't quite know, but I have figured out several things. I think honestly, one of the most important things I realized was how important it is to have a really supportive team. I feel so incredibly grateful to work on the refugee resettlement team for how kind and supportive everybody is, and how we just kind of navigate these like unpredictable things that are thrown our way, and we just adapt and figure it out. And that I just feel like, I don't know, just such a warm environment to walk into. And I think that that's something that I now know I want to seek as I move forward. I am sadly saying goodbye to Chicago, and I will be moving to Seattle. So, but I know that I can hopefully find similar types of work environments. And I also feel confirmed on my path to become a social worker. Jessica has inspired me a lot on this path of the idea of like, what can social workers do? What kinds of, like the fact that it's more than just like that therapy is an awesome thing, but like, look at all these other ways that like social workers are just such a part of the fabric of like what provides for communities. And it's really just set me on this path for sure of, I want to be a social worker. I want to help people be connected, feel like a part of their communities, feel connected to their community resources. And I want to be an advocate. And that just has become crystal clear for me this year through this experience. Wonderful team members, wonderful clients, challenging work. And I just feel like excited to, no matter what I end up doing, because I'm not sure, hoping that I end up having that same feeling of being a part of building community and connecting people to community resources. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. I really appreciate that you were all here tonight. James and Rafi as well. I think that you all gave us a little bit of a taste of what Avodah is like, what it's like to be part of our Service Corps program. And I'm so proud of the work you're all doing and grateful for our supporters who make it all possible. So if you're inspired today to serve as a Jewish Service Corps member, or you know someone in the 21, feel like I'm now advertising, and if you know someone, but I am, in the 21 to 26-year-old range who would be, we do have a few spots still available for this upcoming year, this fall. We have openings particularly available across our program cities at leading not-for-profits doing work on immigration, criminal justice reform, public health, and a little bit more. So you can learn at our website, avodah.net, and apply. We'd love to hear from you, and we need your help getting the word out. And finally, for those who are so inspired, a program year is coming to a close next month, very soon, and your support is as essential and important as it has ever been. So I know many of you have already been generous to Avodah this year, and I just really want to say thank you. We couldn't do it without you. If you are moved to make a gift tonight, to make another donation or a first-time donation as we head into summer, we would be so grateful. We're going to close the formal part of the evening, but my team and I are happy to stay online for a few minutes if people have specific questions about the program or anything else you've heard this evening, or you just want to say hi. And for those who are logging off right now, I just want to say thank you for being here and enjoy the rest of your evening.